Hello, this is Mrs. Koppel, and in this video I'm going to cover two ways that you can build the inverse function when you're given an equation. One is using a table and one is going to be completely algebraic. So to begin with, here is our function we're building, and we are starting with the x. We're starting with the input, so I'm going to write x next to the space that says start. The first thing, if I follow order of operations, the first thing I would see that is happening to the x is that I'm adding 3. So my operation is that I add 3, and that's what gives me this expression. That value is then being multiplied by 2, so the operation is multiply by 2. Negative 2 times x plus 3, and then that expression is being divided by 6. Negative 2 times x plus 3 divided by 6, and we can write it then as an equation. Negative 2 times x plus 3 over 6, and what we're doing is we're just saying that it is equal to y. Well, the inverse operation, we're going to start from the bottom and we're going to work our way up. Now the inverse of y is x, so we start with x. The inverse of divided by 6 is multiply by 6. So now I have 6x. The inverse of, and that should have been multiply by negative 2, the inverse of multiply by negative 2 would be to divide by negative 2. So we have 6x divided by negative 2, and we can simplify that to negative 3x. And then the inverse of add 3 is subtract 3. So we have negative 3x, subtract 3, and we end by writing it equal to y. So y equals negative 3x, subtract 3, which gives us the inverse function, y equals negative 3x, subtract 3. So you just start by listing the operations done to x in the order they happen, and then to find the inverse, you start with x, and you do those operations, you undo them in reverse order. Now if we want to do this algebraically, I'm going to use the same equation. We're going to follow these steps. The first step is switch x and y. Or switch your input and output. So when I do this with this particular function, it's going to become x equals, I'm going to place that negative on the 2. In parentheses, it'll become y plus 3 all over 6. And then what we're going to do is we're going to solve for y. Well, if I want to get the y by itself, the first thing I have to undo is this 6. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 6, and that gives me 6x. So now I have 6x equals negative 2 times y plus 3. Now I know you might be thinking, well, let's distribute that negative 2. Well, that's just multiplying, and if I want to undo a multiplication, I would divide by negative 2, and we have negative 3 equals y plus 3, and I've made a mistake somewhere. I need to figure out what it is. Let's see here, we multiply by 6. Oh, I know what my mistake is. I forgot my x here. There we go. That's my mistake. Now, to get y by itself, I need to subtract 3 from each side. And I end up with negative 3x subtract 3 equals y. Now what you should notice is the steps that I took were the exact same steps I took with my table. I multiply by 6, that was the first thing I did, and then I divide by negative 2, that was the second thing, and then I subtract 3, and I have my expression. So this is the algebraic method. First thing you want to do is switch the x and the y, and then solve for y. Undo the equation to get the y by itself. And these are the two methods for finding the inverse function of a given function.